Um, I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a very, how would you describe it the last week? What's the correct? There's many adjectives.
Well, there's so many.
But I think it's really important for Alyssa and I to have a conversation, and I feel really good about having the conversation now.
Mm-hmm.
I think on last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I just felt it was all a little premature for us.
Well, it's such a delicate subject,
Yes.
and it's a conversation that needs to be had. It's a hard conversation, and even for anyone who's watched our show, for the past few years, we definitely try and dive into different issues that are going on in the world, but I think that this is definitely one of the most sensitive
Yeah.
and an imperative topic to cover. And like always, how we always try and do in life and on the show and through the show with our message is we just try and educate ourselves,
Yep.
absorb everything that's going on, and then try our hardest to have actionable takeaways of ways that we can add value or be better or do better no matter the situation.
Adding value to the world and adding value to the conversation.
Yes.
So a lot of what we're going to get into today is from our perspectives. If you're stopping by for the very first time of seeing our show, welcome. We traditionally don't get into politics, and we're not going to get into politics today. This is not going to be a political conversation.
It's not a partisan issue. It's more of a human issue, and that's why.
Yeah, and so our conversation, but we just wanted to preface that at the very beginning that if you're uncomfortable with political conversation, even though it's not even really going to be that political, then maybe this won't be the episode for you. But if you're interested in hearing our perspectives of growing up, and then you're gonna. I think we're gonna add a lot of value to the conversation because I think there's a lot of people like you and I who have, in my experience, and we'll actually get into this. Let's open it up, and then because that's gonna open up the actual conversation that I want to talk about, and I also want to touch on the responsibility how you and I, along with many other people, and people who have 82 followers to 8,000 followers to 8 million followers and everyone in between, how the influence and or platform or voice is now across the board and what that means and what that does for people's actions and behaviors in the 2020 world. It's very fascinating. And you and I realized that we have a responsibility because you can also feel how some people, and I'm not taking this as a dig, but there's some people are tone deaf to what's going on, and how we've navigated, especially as our responsibility and accountability have grown, as our platforms have grown, is we have to always be authentic and truthful because if we use that as our compass, we will always come out on top, even if our truth and authenticity brings us in the wrong path. The audience knows we're being truthful and authentic, and that is what you need.
Yep.
And because we post all the time, it is imperative for us to have the conversation. Those who don't post much or don't post or don't create content, that's a whole different topic.
But hopefully you're having the conversation at home.
Yes. So we're going to get into all that. But welcome everyone to the Freddie and Alyssa show. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, and comment, all that YouTube fun stuff, all that fun YouTube stuff. See, it's been 5 days and my intro. Yeah, but we've been putting out content for a few years now, so there's a lot of stuff on the page if you want to check it out. And I want to give a shout out to a few of our producers here who have now become part of the producing team. And I'm going to name a few. Let me see where my picture is here. And if I mess up anyone's name, I apologize. Becca Short, Amanda Boswell, Steve Rosenquist, Jack Forever 11, Jane Sinat, Gina Montoya, Dave Oliver, Trisha Ray, Kathleen Barton, and Johnny Ford, Uncle Johnny, decided to give 10 today.
Dang.
And we'll continue, so don't think we forgot you. We have the list, and we're just going in, I guess, chronological order of the people who have become part of the producing team. And if you want to learn more about that, we do have the link in the description. But I want to hop into our episode today. We're not going to have this episode sponsored. We don't want to get into anything except the conversation between the two of us and our experience. And how would you... We felt it was important to not have anything planned so that this can be off the cusp because I think there's also a lot of, and yet again, no judgment, but there's also a lot of people who have, in a good way, when you have an important, delicate subject, to have things planned, to have things written out, and to be able to speak. Some people do better that way. But I also think that there's a lot of virtue signaling of people who are just jumping on the bandwagon. And again, no judgment, I am not here to judge anybody, but I just want to point out everything that we have experienced in 7 days.
Yeah.
I have experienced the people who are, and I think most people are, including us, who are against the rioting and the looting. We are for the protests. We have learned about protests because there has been protests in our lifetime, but where we are in our lives, this is something that is really impactful. And in that sense, the protesting has brought awareness for us to do a deep dive back into our history lesson. Because many of you at home, I can only imagine too, if you haven't opened up your history book since you were 14, 15, 16 years old, I know me, I was interpreting the information that I was learning about our history and Black history as a 15-year-old boy with no perspective of the world, no life experience, no understanding, never have left my city really. So when you look back as a 28-year-old, a 32-year-old, a 57-year-old, because of your life experience, this information is going to resonate with you differently.
100%.
Did you feel that?
Absolutely. Well, because when this all happened, I mean, devastated isn't even the word. Whatever, that times a million. And I just remember thinking, I go, really not again. The fact that was my initial thought, I mean, that is a problem in itself. And so we really were like, well, let's get educated, because we knew some stuff, but let's call it out. I'm a white woman, you're a white man. I'm never going to know what it's going to feel like to be a Black man or woman. Neither will you. But the best that we can do, which is all we're ever trying to do, is to educate and really figure out what it is that we can do to add value, how to add to the conversation, and understand to the best of our ability what's going on. And so, you really went down, like, I feel, the podcast hole. I was all about researching online and reading essays, and we watched documentaries and really just trying to grasp what's going on. And learning about it now as a 32-year-old woman and man, it was so different.
Yes.
It actually means something to me now. It affects me now. Not that... Differently.
But you also can't blame a 15-year-old who just doesn't know.
You're just trying to pass your classes, You don't really feel and understand. I mean, honestly, in school, there's so much I learned, but I don't think any of it really meant anything to me.
On any level.
But
I will say there are 15-year-olds who do understand, which shows how we all grew up differently. But here's the most interesting thing for me. I want to word this correctly, but in my 32 years, I have not, in my real life, I've obviously seen stories, I've watched movies, I have seen and witnessed racism through other people's stories more now. That's the thing that's been affecting me the most. Set aside from the documentaries and articles, hearing real life stories of racism, people stepping up against racism, and the things that's happened to them personally has opened my eyes by hearing it.
Yeah.
But I believe I'm probably in another group that maybe people don't know of, that in my 32 years, I never witnessed racism. Obviously not towards myself,
right,
but even when I grew up. Absolutely. In my town, there was no racism that I grew up with. There was no segregation of, like, some of the stories I heard about David Goggins when he was sharing that someone wrote the N-word on his car. Someone came up to him in a Pizza Hut when he was with all his friends and said, you shouldn't be sitting here, or some sort of variation of that story. When I grew up, there was just white and black in my town. When I was 18 years old, I moved out here, and it continued. If anything, the other cultures was shocking to me because it was so white and black in my town. There was like one person who was like Puerto Rican, a couple people who were Hispanic, and maybe one or two people who were Asian. That's it. Our entire town is white and black. It was more of a cultural shock for me when I came out to LA that I was like, Armenian? I didn't know Persian Armenian? Wait, Indian? Like all the Iranian? Russian?
Yeah.
I was more culturally shocked by how I was that inclusive, but not on the black and white issues. because there was no, to me, there was no racism that I was brought up around.
Right.
I wasn't brought up in a household of racism. I wasn't brought up in a homophobic household. But I will tell you, I witnessed in my lifetime more bigotry and homophobia than I have actual racism. So I'm not making any sort of statement. I'm just speaking my truths, that I believe there's a lot of people who grew up with no diversity, and that's their journey, and there's a different way that they have to learn about everything.
Of course.
There are people like us who never thought of racism personally because we were just all together. I went to dinner and lunches and on school buses and to baseball trips with white and black friends my entire life, and never had someone come up in a Pizza Hut or write something on someone's car or deface someone's book in school.
Yeah.
We were all partying together, playing sports together, white, black, across the board. So when I moved out here, the same thing continued. But when you start hearing the stories of, wow, I just happened to be navigating in a way that it wasn't as blatant in my life.
Right.
And so as I'm hearing all this stuff, it made me want to go, let me learn more about other parts of the country, other people's experiences, and re-watch and relearn about the history of America and Black history.
Yep.
And that is what we have been doing for the past 7 days, and it is eye-opening.
Wildly
And the
eye-opening.
thing that I love the most, and this doesn't take away from any documentary or article, hearing people's stories to me is what impacts me the most, because it's a personal story about them. There is still a political divide on a lot of articles or things that you're seeing. You don't know what the political spin is of what they're trying to share,
Sure.
because there are groups that are all for the rioting, most are against it. But then there's people who are like, there is no racism. And then there's people who are like, there is. It's so divided that the thing that has taught me the most was listening to people's stories and seeing people come together.
Oh,
My
gosh,
favorite
yes.
things online are not people from one of the 6 groups bullying the other groups when we're all on the same team. It was from watching people come together, watching officers march, watching officers kneel with the protesters, watching protesters defend other protesters, protesters stopping the rioters, people coming together and crying and hugging and embracing. The love and compassion is what touched me the most.
Yeah.
And then lastly, because I want to kick it over to you with this as well, but I found this whole thing such an interesting learning experience of how people are treating people online. And just like people go on a hike to get the photo, not the exercise, there are still some people who are on social who are standing up and saying all this, but then aren't, like, they're taking video saying you need to donate and petition from their window when there's a peaceful protest down and isn't going.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. Not that there's anything right or wrong.
Well, what's interesting about that is that, you know, we are a very eclectic group in the human race. We are all wired differently, different body chemistries, different things that make us tick, obviously. And when it comes to certain issues in life, even something like this, like racial inequality, you have to educate yourself and figure out, first and foremost, okay, I need to educate myself. What's the best route for me to do that? Is it going to be documentaries? Do I need to have conversations? Do I need to be on Facebook? Like, I saw a friend of mine post on Facebook, when was the first time you ever experienced racism? And I sat and I read every comment. I mean, there were hundreds. And that, like you mentioned, actual stories is the education. Because it made me devastated, angry, mad, and even understanding just like 1% of what they could possibly feel. Trying to have empathy. That was so interesting. So you need to first and foremost figure out, what's the best way for me to learn? You know, me as Alyssa, what do I like to read? Does it need to be a documentary? Do I need to listen? Then from there, you need to figure out, what's my truth? What feels right to me? Are you someone who likes to donate? Are you someone who likes to go out and be a part of it, you know, and actually be there and protest? Is that your truth? Is it sharing different petitions and signing them? Is it just having conversations with people? The main thing for me with all of this was getting information from every side, left, right, up, down, whatever you want to say. I like to see, and this isn't any issue in life, how the other side thinks.
Yeah.
You
Like,
have to
everything
do
we're
that.
sharing is not just about this delicate issue, The reason that we were able to excel our education in this field that needed a tune-up is because over the past 6 years, we've been practicing personal development, resourcefulness, problem solving, and empathy. So that's what we are about on our podcast, is that we're obviously tackling this topic today, but everything we're talking about can be applied to other aspects of your life. We can't just sit in our same ways all this time in life. People evolve. In every aspect of your life, becoming a better mother, becoming a better husband or wife, becoming a better neighbor, becoming someone better in the community, learning and becoming it. That's when I realized what the goal in life was for me. When I understood that my life leading all the way up till 25 years old, I did not ever think about anything that wasn't self-fulfilling. Because I was just excited about life. I was a free man to just like I was experiencing what's it like to travel out of the country for the first time. What's it like to, to do X, Y, and Z. And once you start fulfilling these cool moments in your life, you also start looking for that deeper meaning. And the deeper meaning is, how can I become a better person in every aspect of my life every single day? Every single day. You can go to bed at night being like, I learned something. Wow. This is so cool, and it applies across the board, and that's what we're all about here. Is how do you lead someone to a behavior? How do you lead someone to change by being inspirational? So not only am I against the riots and the looting, I'm also against the overall bullying of how people are telling other groups of people how to act and what they need to do. I understand the anger to an extent. I understand the passion, because I'm reading comments and I'm hearing the stories. When I hear a story about your life, how incredibly racist people have been to you and why you're saying, listen up, white people, like blah, 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 blah. You have shown me why you feel that way, and I'm listening, even though someone like myself doesn't learn by someone telling someone else how stupid they are because they don't know. And what I think the best thing is, and this is just yet again my opinion, I'm not here to preach to anybody about how they live their life. I am all about freedom of doing what you want to do. And I even saw this gentleman who was saying, listen, do what you want to do, white people. If you have the privilege and you want to use it on your platform, do it. Or if you just want to go sit up in your mansion somewhere, or you want to go do nothing about it, do what you got to do. Because you also don't want to bully people into posting the black square, bully people into showing up to a protest, bully people into acting a certain way. So if something really does go down and you look to the side and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you really didn't mean it. You also don't want false alliances either. And this was this gentleman, I wish I knew his name. It went viral on it was a black guy who was really, he was just so passionate. Those were the changing moments for me. That's what I like, is you have to lead. And that's what Alyssa and I strive to do, not on this specific topic, but on everything. We have to live a life through actions that will inspire other people to make up their mind. I want to live such an inspirational life that people look at us and go, wow, I don't feel attacked. My walls are down. I'm not being bullied. Freddie and Alyssa aren't telling me what to do. They're not making me feel good or bad about my decisions, because we understand that everyone has had a different life growing up. Everyone has a different journey. How do you live an inspirational life? When I see protesters, when I see someone bring the cops water, when I see people give great speeches, you have inspired me to take action. When you're yelling and bullying in any aspect, and that's why I don't respond to hateful comments on my social. Thank God, thank you, all of you. I got to say 99.999% has been fabulous and positive, but we do get, and I love the feedback. I love thoughtful discussion. If your message to us is dumbasses, that is not going to add to the conversation, and I am not going to write back to you. And I'm not going to resort to your level and be a bully and absolutely intellectually destroy you, because I am emotionally intelligent and I don't talk to people that way. So that's what you want to apply on situations like this as well. But I understand the anger and the passion to an extent, because I don't know how people live their life and how they've walked in their shoes. I've never walked in their shoes. Of course. So that's what I have been watching. Not only about learning about Black history and learning about racism and learning about people's stories, but watching how us as human beings are failing to communicate as well as successfully communicating.
But it's communication is key, because even with the whole the show must be paused movement, with the black screen or the black tile on your Instagram, we first had heard about it, I think it was like Monday afternoon or Monday night. And we were, researching what it was all about. And I guess two execs they might have been the CEOs of this label, a music label, came up with the idea, and they wanted everyone in entertainment to take a day, reflect, pause, listen to stories of the Black community, learn, educate, and that's kind of how it started. Then other, movements kind of got
commingled.
Yeah, and so we were under the impression that, oh, you post this, you're showing peaceful solidarity, we're all in this together, and so that's what we did. Then you wake up the next morning, and people are like, you guys are just filling up the news feeds and clogging it. This isn't right. Take this down. And
We have been extremely against jumping on the bandwagon if it's not our truth.
Exactly.
We saw the black tile. We saw what it represented initially, but we didn't just read because of one post of what it meant. We researched. What does this really mean in a delicate situation? Yep. What does this mean? Is this insanely political? Is it like we researched and we watched so that we knew that we can stand behind. And if all of a sudden someone popped in on a hologram and puts a mic in my face and wants me to talk about something I did, I can have a thoughtful, intellectual conversation about it because I did my research.
Yep.
I will not post and talk about things that I do not know, and I'm not ashamed to say I don't know something. That's how we build respect and trust, because people know we don't talk out of our A's. I have to learn. And so when people say this isn't about that, it's because there are so many people also who are just jumping on the bandwagon based off of fear, basing off of wanting to belong.
Yep.
So again, I get all perspectives. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And everyone, all 330 million of us, have our own path. And there was a great post by our new friend Chris. He posted something about whatever lane you're in. I'm butchering the quote. But it's like if you're someone who's going to go protest or someone who's going to learn or something, like allow people to be where they are and just encourage us to be on the same side. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you think, I believe 99% of people are not for looting and rioting. 100% of people agree that the murder of George Floyd was wrong.
Of course.
Everyone agrees on that. And it was so interesting to see how people agree with the peaceful protest. There are so many things we agree upon, and yet there's a huge divide. So it was, well, what is that about? So I just kept my emotions out, my ego out, and I just wanted to sit back. And it took until today for me to feel confident to be able to have a thoughtful conversation on the podcast.
Yeah.
So that is why I am so proud of finding. I had a great conversation with our friend Mio. I never read a book ever. When I was at 25 years old, I picked up my very first book of personal development called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. I recommend it. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I then started learning about Simon Sinek. I started learning about Tim Ferriss. I started learning from all of these thought leaders. The list goes on. Tony Robbins. I mean, there's so many. You know everybody. And I started to understand how I can be better. Yeah. And that is what we need to do here in a situation like this, is we need to start with us as individuals. What can you, who is listening, what can you do to become better, not only on this subject, but on everything in life? It starts with you, then it starts within your home, then it starts within your family, then it starts within your neighborhood, then within your community, then your city, then your state, then the nation, then the world. It's hard if your individual self or inside your household, if you're combating each other, how you're going to go change a bigger 100%. Group, you have to start with yourself. And that is what we will always stand behind, because it just makes sense, and there's stats behind that. Is like, how do we better ourselves? And
but you have to start small, and you have to start daily. Consistency. Yes. No matter what it is in life, on your own personal goals, you got to start small. You can't just wake up the next day and everything's perfect. You have to do your part, and you have to work at it and be very, very intentional every single day. It's so important. And on that same topic, another author I love is Brendan Burchard, and he shared, it was the first post I had seen, and this was days ago, and it was more about actionable steps that we want, conducting change, and it was immediately charge and imprison the other 3 officers who aided the killing of George Floyd, which today they did. Pass new police brutality laws in all 50 states. Reform criminal justice laws to end the discrimination and mass incarceration, which we learned a lot about in The 13th, which is a documentary we watched on Netflix the other night. Teach peace, acceptance, meditation, anger management, and emotional intelligence in all schools.
Can you read that last part again?
Teach peace, acceptance, meditation, anger management, and emotional intelligence in all schools. And vote. So the one before voting, which obviously voting is wildly important to do as well, but I feel like it starts
with the individual.
Yes.
And it starts in our schools, and that's a whole other conversation that I want to get into, because that's yet again not the topic of conversation. But I think everyone can agree that there's got to be a better way of integrating into our school systems at a young age and in the households. So the education doesn't even have to be solely in schools, but just the education. And I wish the media would do better. And yet again, that's another whole conversation. It's just like you have all this power, and it's like it's not as much education on emotional intelligence. And what this has also taught me is how our communication skills need to become better. And that's what I'm working on. How do you communicate ideas, ideologies? How do you communicate your beliefs, your morals? How do you communicate to someone else effectively that creates a behavior in that person? Yep. Not an emotional reaction, a behavior. And you're seeing it across the social media. We have so much power in this phone. We have so much power. And the good and the bad is coming from the communication. So another thing I'm paying attention to is how do we all get better at communication? And what's interesting about some of these social platforms is I was also struggling. It's hard to have this conversation in 200 characters on Twitter.
Of course. And
this conversation needs to be this conversation, long form.
Absolutely.
And that's the criticism on all the debates. How people are trying to have discussions like what we're having, plus Medicare, plus immigration, plus women's rights, plus abortion, plus trade, plus international all of this in 60 seconds, and then you get a 30-second rebuttal. How can you need to have a conversation like this to allow people to say, so what do you mean exactly by that? Or how do you do this? This long form is great. And I love that the Instagram and Twitter is a great way to create, snippets and ideas and share. But that's why I was looking, and you and I were looking a lot, being like, how do I condense what we just talked about into 3 sentences without it seeming like, and some people have done it well. But yet again, we're just talking through just our whole process in general.
But also, too, not putting the opposing person down. I have been seeing that all over social media. It's literally like, my thought's the best, you suck, if you don't do it this way, this is the wrong way. And that digs into the deeper conversation of, how psychologically they have the different personality colors?
Oh, I thought you were going to go into something else with Simon Sinek, and I was like, are you kidding me? Because I almost wanted to talk about that today.
So connected, but then
But yours is different. Yeah.
No, so they're different personality colors. They have blue, red, yellow, green, and each one is based off of your personality traits. And if you are blue, so let's say the blue is more into parties, socializing, and I'm talking to someone who's a red who just wants to make money and they're only interested in numbers. If I'm going to come to you, you're red, and I'm a blue, I need to come up with a different approach of how I'm going to speak to you about a certain topic because you're a red and you think differently than me. I'm not going to be able to sell you on what I think about, you got to come over here. This party is amazing. It's so much fun. And you're sitting over here as a red going.
You got to speak to the personality type.
Exactly.
Well, we learned that in sales and marketing. And,
yes.
not that everything is sales and marketing, but it's kind of, it is. Like you're selling your ideas and your
But I'm
beliefs.
just saying to communicate with that person on any level.
Yes.
Whether it's a very serious issue or, hey.
You're trying to sell a mattress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to know that everyone is different. Everyone ticks differently. And you can't just sit and yell at people and say, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to figure out different ways to speak about your thoughts and approach them in a way that this other individual is going to be open to listening to, and that will affect them and ultimately lead to actionable change, which is what we want.
Yeah.
So tell me Simon Sinek's thing.
Well, I encourage people to go watch it. Type in Simon Sinek, what, how, and why, and he'll describe it way better. But to give you just a little piece of it, is essentially when it comes to sales and marketing or trying to create a behavioral change in someone, the way our brain is structured is that we can understand the what, we can understand the how, but the what and how part of your brain does not create change or a behavior. You have to get to the why part of your brain, and the why part of your brain, I believe, isn't responsible for language. So anytime you feel a certain way, the way he describes it is he goes, I can't really find the words. It just didn't feel right. He goes, that's the why part of our brain that doesn't associate with language. And he uses it in a company way, where so many people tell you what they do, how they do it. But people make decisions on buying or into a belief, or buying into an idea, or buying a product based on the why part of their brain. So a lot of people are out here trying to tell you what and how to do things, but they're leaving out the why, and the why part of it is what drives behavior.
Yep.
And what we want is actual change.
Yes.
So we need to speak to not what is happening, how it's happening, but why.
That video is so
but
good.
why?
So
and he gives so many great examples in a sales,
Sure.
but it's how biology works.
Everything.
So when you know about the 4 colors of personality, when you know about the brain, the what, how, and the why, when you know about emotional intelligence and personal development and how to listen, put your ego aside, live through action, not just talk, all of that is what needs to be funneled to the front line, and you're going to see things change so quickly. So that is what I'm interested in learning how to do. Other than, we're doing our best on the podcast and our social platforms, and the more people we reach, the more people we can share these ideas with of like, hey, learn how to become a better person in every facet of your life. But how do you change that on a massive scale?
Sure.
That is where we're at this point, where there isn't a grand solution yet.
Yeah.
And the reason that it can't just happen like that is because there's been centuries of injustice.
Yeah.
You can't just change it like that.
Right.
So I'm watching the people who are way more qualified, who are way more educated, and trying to learn, going, okay, so what do we do about all this?
Yeah.
What is, and I loved how Brandon Picard, I love that those are great solutions, but great, yet again, that's what to do.
Right.
And I understand why we're doing it, but it's like, now I need, how do you get to that?
Yeah.
How do you get to that? That's what people are wanting. How do we get to that change? So I want to continue to hear people's thoughts on that. And I'm really curious for all of you too who have been who listened to our podcast today, what your thoughts are. And please, I know this is a delicate subject. Everybody's been be thoughtful, and if people start having discussions in the comment section, please remember that these people who you might have a disagreement with have not lived and had the experiences that you have had. That's why they're this way. And not that anyone's right or wrong.
A friendly debate is fine.
It's what's
needed.
What needed.
Yeah, but on the same note too, I think it's so important for every person listening to be accountable with yourself, in the sense of, at the end of the day, asking yourself, was I the most compassionate and kind person I could be today? Because that is, I feel like, what's missing so much. It's just the ripple effect of doing something nice, being kind, being nice to someone. I saw a friend of ours, AJ, took these amazing photos when, I think it was in he took a lot of amazing photos, but he went to Santa Monica the night after one of the riots, and the military was there, and he just got these just incredible shots that showed that they were human first. You could see in their eyes, these are individuals who, this is their job. They are going home to family, to friends. They have a whole another life. And, anyone, no matter the side that you're on, we are one race. We are the human race first. And you have to be kind, and you have to be compassionate to people. Period.
Because every single decision affects us as a whole.
Yes.
We are so big now.
Yes.
We remember we Googled the population. That's the other big discussion is that there is a lot of us.
Yeah.
That we are the melting pot of the world. There are 330 million people, different genders, different sex, different race, different religion, different language, different culture, different life experiences.
Yeah.
People who grew up in single family households, people who've grown up with two parents, people who grew up with no parents. All that needs to be taken into consideration when we're speaking to one another.
Yes.
We don't know about the abuse that people have gone through, the psychological. How about people who are born with disabilities, learning disabilities, communication disabilities? It is so complex that we can't just walk around and go, well, everyone should know this. Everyone should. At the end of the day, you can see on social media and in the real world that a lot of people are compassionate. When someone's in trouble,
Yes.
you see countless amounts, 99% of people have big hearts, and we're here to help one another. And everyone's success is everyone's success.
Yep.
So we need to work on how do we communicate, how do we all become better, how do we work together, and how can we just move forward so that we can work together to have a prosperous world and to have a lot of fun together. Let's all
one
win.
life, man.
Let's all win together.
Yeah.
Let's create change in ourselves that will ripple effect to the world, and let's build something amazing together. Let's hold everyone accountable. Let's get behind each other and let's do this thing.
Yep.
And it's easier said than done. So don't think that's my whole
No, absolutely. And I think it starts with figuring out, how you can educate yourself and then finding your truth and seeing what feels best and right to me that aligns with me that I want to do to have actionable change.
Yes.
And do it.
And don't allow outside information and outside, I don't want to use the word bullying for that, but outside voices that even though you're taking information from both sides or many different people, don't allow someone to sway you and you break your truth. Me and Alyssa have sat around and we have heard things going, like it hits us and we go, why are we feeling this way? Is it because we need to make a change here? Or is it because it's not really our truth and like we don't want to, because you hear a lot and then all of a sudden you listen to a few other friends or you watch a few other things and you continue to shift on this gauge all day.
Yeah.
And we finally go, we need to, every time we feel something, let's talk about it, let's iron it out, and let's see what we need to do. Oh, we need to learn something, or oh, no, this is our truth here, and it's okay.
Yep.
Or maybe you had a different...
And you just don't have the knowledge yet.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff that a massive amount of different stories, information that we've learned over the past week that have helped us formulate this conversation right here.
I don't know what we would have talked about on last Thursday.
We weren't informed. And that's okay. It's okay if you don't know. I still don't know a lot of stuff,
Well, and informed not only about the history of America in general. Yeah. I'm talking about being informed on how to process, communicate, and share thoughtful ideas to the conversation because I was new to all of it.
Yep.
I was like, wait a minute. What is all of this? Like, what is all this? Yeah. All of the ways that people are communicating, talking, handling it. We have obviously seen protests. We've seen marches.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah.
And so I was just taking in like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of take it all in, and then now I feel like I have been able to be authentic and truthful up until this moment, and this is kind of all I have right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I'm going to continue now. Let's see what the next week
of course
brings. What else are we going to learn? What else is going to happen? So we're wishing all of you safety.
Yep.
And for people to refrain from the violence, because so many people,
I can't.
Innocent people, police officers, law enforcement, a lot of people are getting hurt as well.
I know.
So, my heart just goes out to everybody right now. Let's focus on love and compassion, and let's focus on learning, and let's focus on creating a behavior and an action that rings true to you.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate all of you. Comment below if you would like, thoughtfully, we ask. We will
really appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you. Yeah. Thanks for allowing us to have a platform like this to be able to share this, because this is also something that you all hold us accountable and responsible, that we know you all you're probably thinking like, well, what are Freddie and Alyssa going to say about this? And we have to bring you the best of us.
Yep.
You hold us accountable to continue to be these learning machines because you're coming to us. If I want to be like how the podcasters who inspire me, that when something like this happens, I go, oh God, what
did they say?
I have to know from the person that I've watched for a year
of course.
and who I trust and respect, what do they have to say about this?
Yep.
I need guidance
Yep. on
someone I can trust that's informed. And we want to be that for you. And so we're going to continue to evolve, and we just appreciate you so much. So we'll I don't know when our next step is going to be. I think we will release one this Friday, but we're going to take it day by day.
Yes.
So we appreciate all of you, and until next
Love
time.
you guys.